Symposium of Plato continues. The Speech of Pausanias. Phaedrus, Pausanias began, I'm not quite sure our subject has been well defined. Our charge has been simple, to speak in praise of love. This would have been fine if love himself were simple too, but as a matter of fact, there are two kinds of love. In view of this, it might be better to begin by making clear which kind of love we are to praise. And we therefore try to put our discussion back on the right track and explain which kind of love ought to be praised. Then I shall give him the praise he deserves, as the god he is. It is a well-known fact that love and Aphrodite are inseparable. If, therefore, Aphrodite were a single goddess, there could also be a single love. But since there are actually two goddesses of that name, there are also two kinds of love. I don't expect you'll disagree with me about the two goddesses, will you? One is an older deity, the motherless daughter of Uranus, the god of heaven. She is known as Urania, or heavenly Aphrodite. The other goddess is younger, the daughter of Zeus and Dione. Her name is Pandemos, or common Aphrodite. It follows, therefore, that there is a common as well as a heavenly love, depending on which goddess is love's partner. And although, of course, all the gods must be praised, we must still make an effort to keep these two gods apart. The reason for this applies in the same way to every type of action. Concerning itself, no action is either good or bad, honourable or shameful. Take, for example, our own case. We had a choice between drinking, singing, or having a conversation. Now, in itself, none of these is better than any other. How it comes out depends entirely on how it is performed. If it is done honorably and properly, it turns out to be honorable. If it is done improperly, it is disgraceful. My point is that exactly this principle applies to being in love. Love is not in himself noble and worthy of praise. That depends on whether the sentiments he produces in us are themselves noble. Now, the common Aphrodite's love is himself truly common. As such, he strikes whenever he gets a chance. This, of course, is the love felt by the vulgar, who attracted to women no less than to boys, to the body more than to the soul, and to at least intelligent partners, since all they care about is completing the sexual act. Whether they do it honorably or not is of no concern. That is why they do whatever comes their way, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and which one it is incidental to their purpose. For the love who moves them belongs to a much younger goddess, who through her parentage partakes of the nature of both the female and the male. Contrast this with the love of heavenly Aphrodite. This goddess, whose descent is purely male, hence this love is for boys, is considerably older and therefore free from the lewdness of youth. That's why those who are inspired by her love are attracted to the male. They find pleasure in what is by nature stronger and more intelligent. But, even within the group that is attracted to handsome boys, some are not moved purely by this heavenly love. Those who are do not fall in love with little boys. They prefer older ones, whose cheeks are showing the first traces of a beard, a sign that they have begun to form minds of their own. I am convinced that a man who falls in love with a young man of this age is generally prepared to share everything with the one he loves. He is eager, in fact, to spend the rest of his own life with him. He certainly does not aim to deceive him, to take advantage of him while he is still young and inexperienced, and then, after exposing him to ridicule, to move quickly on to someone else. As a matter of fact, there should be a law forbidding affairs with young boys. If nothing else, all this time and effort would not be wasted in such an uncertain pursuit. And what is more uncertain than whether a particular boy will eventually make something of himself, physically or mentally? Good men, of course, are willing to make a law like this for themselves, but those other lovers, the vulgar ones, need external restraint. For just this reason we have placed every possible legal obstacle to their seducing our own wives and daughters. These vulgar lovers are the people who have given love such a bad reputation that some have gone so far as to claim that taking any man as a lover is in itself disgraceful. Would anyone make this claim if you weren't thinking of how hasty vulgar lovers are, and therefore how unfair to their loved ones? For nothing done properly and in accordance with our customs would ever have provoked such righteous disapproval. I should point out, however, that although the customs regarding love in most cities are simple and easy to understand, here in Athens, and in Sparta as well, they are remarkably complex. In places where the people are inarticulate, like Elis or Boeotia, tradition straightforwardly approves taking a lover in every case. No one there, young or old, will ever consider it shameful. The reason, I suspect, is that, being poor speakers, they want to save themselves the trouble of having to offer reasons and arguments in support of their suits. By contrast, in places like Ionia and almost every other part of the Persian Empire, taking a lover is almost always considered disgraceful. The Persian Empire is absolute. That is why it condemns love as well as philosophy and sport. It is no good for rulers if the people they rule cherish ambitions for themselves or form strong bonds of friendship with one another. That there are precisely the effects of philosophy, sport, and especially of love is a lesson the tyrants of Athens learned directly from their own experience. Didn't their reign come to a dismal end because of the bonds uniting Harmodius and Aristogiton in love and affection? So you can see that plain condemnation of love reveals lust for power in the rulers and cowardice in the ruled, while indiscriminate approval testifies to general dullness and stupidity. Our own customs, which, as I already said, are much more difficult to understand, are also far superior. Recall, for example, that we consider it more honorable to declare your love rather than to keep it a secret, especially in your love of the youth of good family and accomplishment, even if he isn't all that beautiful. Recall also that a lover is encouraged in every possible way. This means that what he does is not considered shameful. On the contrary, conquest is deemed noble, and failure shameful. And as for attempts at conquest, our custom is to praise lovers for totally extraordinary acts, so extraordinary, in fact, that if they performed them for any other purpose whatever, they'd reap the most profound contempt. Suppose, for example, that in order to secure money, or a public post, or any other practical benefit from another person, a man were willing to do what lovers do for the ones they love. Imagine that in pressing his suit, he went on his knees in public view and begged in the most humiliating way, that he swore all sorts of vows, that he spent the night at the other man's doorstep, they were anxious to provide services even a slave would have refused. While he could be sure that everyone, his enemies no less than his friends, would stand in his way. His enemies would jeer at his fawning servility, while his friends, ashamed on his behalf, would try everything to bring him back to his senses. But let a lover act in any of these ways, and everyone will immediately say what a charming man he is. No blame attaches to his behavior. Custom treats it as a noble through and through. And what is even more remarkable is that, at least according to our popular wisdom, the gods will forgive a lover even for breaking his vows. A lover's vow, our people say, is no vow at all. The freedom given to the lover by both gods and men according to our custom is immense. In view of this, you might well conclude that in our city we consider the lover's desire and the willingness to satisfy it as the noblest things in the world. When, on the other hand, you recall that fathers hire attendants for their sons as soon as they're old enough to be attractive, and that an attendant's main task is to prevent any contact between his charge and his suitors. When you recall how mercilessly a boy's own friends tease him if they catch him at it, and how strongly their elders approve and even encourage such mocking, when you take all this into account, you're bound to come to the conclusion that we Athenians consider such behavior the most shameful thing in the world. In my opinion, however, the fact of the matter is this. As I said earlier, love is, like everything else, complex. Considered simply in itself, it is neither honorable nor a disgrace. Its character depends entirely on the behavior it gives rise to. To give oneself to a vile man in a vile way is truly disgraceful behavior. By contrast, it is perfectly honorable to give oneself honorably to the right man. Now, you may want to know who counts as vile in this context. I will tell you. It is the common vulgar lover, who loves the body rather than the soul, the man whose love is bound to be inconstant, since what he loves is itself mutable and unstateable. The moment the body is no longer in bloom, he flies off and away, his promises and vows and tatters behind him. How different from this is a man who loves the right sort of character, and who remains its lover for life, attached as he is to something that is permanent. You can now see that the point of our customs, they are designed to separate the wheat from the chaff, the proper love from the vile. That's why we do everything we can to make it as easy as possible for lovers to press their suits, and as difficult as possible for young men to comply. It's like a competition, a kind of test to determine to which sort each belongs. This explains two further facts. First, why we consider it shameful to yield too quickly. The passage of time in itself provides a good test in these matters. Second, why we also consider it shameful for a man to be seduced by money or political power, either because he cringes at ill treatment and will not endure it, or because once he has tasted the benefits of wealth and power, he will not rise above them. None of these benefits is stable or permanent, apart from the fact that no genuine affection can possibly be based upon them. Our customs then provide for only one honorable way of taking a man as a lover. In addition to recognizing that the lover's total and willing subjugation to his beloved wishes is neither servile nor reprehensible, we allow that there is one, and only one further reason for willingly subjecting oneself to another which is equally above reproach. That is subjection for the sake of virtue. If someone decides to put himself at another's disposal because he thinks that this will make him better in wisdom or in any other part of virtue, we approve of this voluntary subjection. We consider it neither shameful nor servile. Both these principles, that is, both the principle governing the proper attitude toward the love of young men and the principle governing the love of wisdom or virtue in general, must be combined if a young man is to accept a lover in an honorable way. When an older lover and a young man come together and each obeys the principle appropriate to him, when the lover realizes that he is justified in doing anything for a loved one who grants him favors, when the young man understands that he is justified in performing any service for a lover who can make him wise and virtuous, and when the lover is able to help the young man become wiser and better, and the young man is eager to be taught and improved by his lover, then and only then, when these two principles coincide absolutely, is it ever honorable for a young man to accept a lover. Only in this case, we should notice, is it never shameful to be deceived. In every other case, it is shameful, both for the deceiver and the person he deceives. Suppose, for example, that someone thinks his lover is rich and accepts him for his money. His action won't be any less shameful if it turns out that he was deceived, his lover was a poor man after all. For the young man has already shown himself to be the sort of person who would do anything for money, and that is far from honourable. By the same token, suppose that someone takes a lover in the mistaken belief that his lover is a good man and likely to make him better himself, while in reality the man is horrible, totally lacking virtue. Even so, it is noble for him to have been deceived, for he too has demonstrated something about himself, that he is the sort of person who will do anything for the sake of virtue. What could be more honourable than that? It follows, therefore, that giving in to your lover for virtue's sake is honourable, whatever the outcome. And this, of course, is the heavenly love of the heavenly goddess. Love's value to the city as a whole and to the citizens is immeasurable, for he compels the lover and his loved one alike to make virtue their essential concern. All other forms of love belong to a vulgar goddess. Phaedrus, I'm afraid this hasty improvisation will have to do as my contribution on the subject of love. When Pausanias finally came to a pause, I've learned this sort of fine figure from our clever rhetoricians, it is Aristophanes' turn, according to Aristodemus. But he had such a bad case of the hiccups, he'd probably stuffed himself again, though, of course, it could have been anything, that making a speech was totally out of the question. So he turned to the doctor, Eryximachus, who was next in line, and said to him, Eryximachus, it's up to you, as well it should be. Cure me or take my turn. As a matter of fact, Eryximachus replied, I shall do both. I shall take your turn, you can speak in my place as soon as you feel better, and I shall also cure you. While I'm giving my speech, you should hold your breath for as long as you possibly can. This may well eliminate your hiccups. If it fails, the best remedy is a thorough gargle. And if even this has no effect, then tickle your nose with a feather. A sneeze or two will cure even the most persistent case. The sooner you start speaking, the better, Aristophanes said. I'll follow your instructions to the letter. This, then, was the speech of Eryximachus.